By morning, the city would say his name like a storm, and hers like a secret. The kind of secret that doesn't stay quiet once it's seen by the wrong eyes. The kind of secret that turns a peaceful night into a countdown. The restaurant wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the kind of place where the music stayed low, the lights stayed warm, and the people spoke softly because money was sitting at every table like a god. Crystal glasses, white tablecloths, gold cutlery, cameras hidden behind decor that looked innocent. Men in tailored suits who smiled with their mouths and never with their eyes. Women with diamonds on their necks and hunger in their faces. And staff trained to move like shadows. Quiet, respectful, invisible. That's how the black waitress survived here. By being invisible. By being perfect. By never giving anyone a reason to look at her twice. Her name was Alma. 26. Dark skin like polished mahogany under the light. Natural hair pulled back into a clean bun beneath her work cap. No jewelry except a small stud in one ear. No perfume. No softness she couldn't afford. Her uniform was fitted and professional. Sleeves down to her wrists even though the restaurant's heating was always too warm. She moved between tables with a tray balanced like she was born with it. Smile on command. Head slightly bowed. Eyes lowered at the right moments. Every motion practiced. Controlled. She didn't want attention. Attention was dangerous. Attention led to questions. Questions led to truth. And Alma had spent too many nights learning what truth could cost a woman. Tonight was supposed to be easy. Late shift. Few wealthy couples. One birthday party. One private room reserved for a man important enough to make the manager wipe sweat from his forehead every time the front door opened. The staff knew before he arrived. They always knew. The restaurant didn't need alarms. It had instinct. The air changed. The security at the entrance straightened like they'd been slapped. The manager's voice dropped. The servers stopped laughing in the kitchen. Someone whispered, "He's here." And then the Korean Mafia boss walked in like silence with weight. Not loud. Not showy. No dramatic entrance. Just presence. Broad shoulders beneath a black coat that looked expensive without screaming about it. Dark hair neatly styled. Eyes sharp and cold like they'd never learned mercy. A tattoo curled up the side of his neck. Black ink disappearing under his collar like it was alive. Two men followed behind him. Not bodyguards in the obvious way, but men who looked like they could end a life without leaving a stain on their sleeves. The host bowed slightly. The manager almost tripped over himself rushing forward. "Welcome back, sir." The boss didn't smile. He didn't thank anyone. He simply walked, calm and untouchable, to the private table set near the window where the city lights looked like jewelry scattered across the dark. He sat down as if the room belonged to him. And the whole restaurant accepted it. Even the rich people. Even the arrogant ones. Because power recognizes power. And this man wasn't just wealthy. He was feared. Alma saw him from a distance and immediately looked away. Not because she was impressed. Not because she was curious. But because a man like that didn't look at people the way normal men did. When his eyes landed on you, it felt like being measured. Either useful or disposable. Alma had promised herself she would never be in a room alone with someone like him. But promises didn't pay rent. And survival didn't ask what you wanted. The manager pointed discreetly. "Alma, that table. Be careful." She nodded once, gripping her tray tighter. Her heartbeat didn't change, but her body did what it always did when danger was near. It prepared. Shoulders steady. Face calm. Soul braced. She approached the private table with wine and water. Her steps silent against the polished floor. The boss wasn't talking. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't even looking around. He was just sitting. Like a king waiting for the world to remember its place. Alma kept her eyes on the table as she poured. Careful, professional, smooth. "Would you like to start with appetizers, sir?" His voice came low. "Not yet." 2 words. Cold. Final. Alma nodded and started to pull back. And that's when it happened. Small mistake. A tiny betrayal from her own body. As she turned, the sleeve of her uniform shifted up for half a second, exposing the skin on her wrist and the edge of her forearm. Purple bruises. Finger-shaped marks. The kind that didn't come from falling. The kind that came from being held down. Amma snapped her sleeve down so fast it looked like she'd been burned. Her smile stayed on her face, but it cracked at the corners. She didn't look at him. She didn't breathe properly. She stepped away like nothing happened, like she didn't feel the bruise throbbing under fabric, like her bones didn't carry a story she'd been trying to bury for months. But the damage was done. 'Cause the boss had seen it. He stopped eating. Not slowly. Not thoughtfully. It was immediate. His fork paused midair. His jaw tightened once. His eyes lifted from the plate to her arm, and in that second the restaurant didn't feel warm anymore. It felt cold. It felt hunted. Amma's throat went dry. She kept walking, forcing her legs not to run. She told herself maybe he didn't notice. Maybe the lighting hid it. Maybe he didn't care. Men like him didn't care about women like her. That should have been the comfort. But something heavy pressed against her spine, the sensation of being watched by a predator that had finally caught movement in tall grass. Behind her, the boss's voice cut through the low music like a blade through silk. "Bring her to me. Now." It wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. Chairs didn't scrape. No one gasped. Nobody dared react. But the entire restaurant shifted on that command. Amma felt it. She stopped mid-step. The tray in her hands suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. Because fear wasn't loud in her chest. It was quiet. It was sharp. It was smart. It said one thing over and over. Don't. Don't let him see your face. Don't let him speak to you. Don't let him ask questions you can't survive answering. A shadow moved near her. Not a customer. Not staff. One of his men had already stood up. Already walking toward her like this was decided before she was even born. Amma swallowed. Lips pressed together as she fought to keep her composure. She told herself she could pretend. She could lie. She could smile her way out. She could. Then she heard the boss again. This time closer. Slower. Like he wanted her to feel every word. Amma. Name. Not waitress. Not girl. Not you. Name. Amma froze completely. Her blood turned to ice because she hadn't told anyone in this place her real name. And the way he said it wasn't curiosity. It was recognition. Like he already knew her. Like he'd been waiting. Like the bruises weren't the first thing he noticed at all. Everything in this building is my problem tonight. Amma's mouth opened then closed. Her brain screamed at her to walk away. But her legs didn't move. Because the moment he decided you belonged to his attention, leaving wasn't something you controlled anymore. Amma felt it before she saw it, the subtle shift in the room. His men weren't standing close. They didn't need to. They were moving like shadows along the edges, blending into the staff, blending into the darkness between expensive decor. And then Amma noticed the exits. Not blocked with bodies. Blocked with presence. A man by the hallway. Another one near the entrance. Another one by the bar, facing the door without looking like he was guarding it. Nobody panicked. Nobody noticed. But Amma did. Because she had lived with danger long enough to recognize the shape of a trap. Her lips parted. "Sir, what is this?" The boss's voice stayed low. "Sit." Amma's eyes flickered to the chair. She didn't sit. "I have work," she whispered. "People are waiting." "They can wait," he said. And then softer. "You can't." There was something in that last line that made her stomach drop. Not romance. Not concern. A warning. Fact. Amma's fingers loosened on the tray. Her breath shook once. "Please," she said, the words slipping out before she could stop it. "I'm fine. I don't need help." The boss watched her like he was weighing her soul. "That's what people say," he murmured. "Right before they disappear." Amma's face drained. "I'm not disappearing." His eyes didn't blink. "You already are." She stared at him, confusion and fear twisting together. How do you even know my name? The boss's jaw flexed once, almost like something human tried to surface, and he crushed it back down. I know more than your name, he said. Alma's heart slammed against her ribs. Behind him, one of his men stepped closer, speaking softly in Korean. The boss didn't look away from Alma. He answered just as softly. One sentence. Command. And Alma didn't need to understand the language to understand what it meant, because every man in black moved immediately after. The exits tightened. The air thickened. Alma swallowed hard. What did you just tell them? The boss finally reached for his glass, took a slow sip, and set it down like he had all the time in the world. After your shift, he said calmly, my security will take you home. Alma's eyes widened. No, it came out sharp. Too fast. Too honest. The boss's gaze sharpened. No. Alma shook her head, panic rising. I can't. I don't want. Please, I don't need that. She didn't explain. She couldn't. Because explaining meant admitting. And admitting meant dragging him into her truth. And if a man like him stepped into your truth, he didn't step out without leaving blood behind. The boss stared at her for a long moment, then nodded once, as if her refusal answered a question he hadn't asked out loud. You refuse help, he said quietly. Like help is dangerous. Alma's lips trembled. It is. That was the mistake. The slip. The crack. The boss's expression didn't change, but the temperature in his eyes did. Drop. Finish your shift, he said, standing now. He was tall enough that Alma felt smaller instantly. Then you go home. Alma's voice broke. And if I don't? The boss leaned closer, just enough for only her to hear. Then I'll have to come to you. He turned and walked away like the conversation was finished. Like her fear was a form of consent. Alma stood there frozen, watching him return to his table as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't just taken control of her night with a whisper. She stumbled back to the kitchen, hands trembling as she tried to breathe, tried to work, tried to pretend she wasn't being watched by every camera in that building. Hours passed like a punishment. Every time she glanced toward the private table, she saw him there, calm, untouched, eating slowly, speaking rarely, waiting. When her shift finally ended, she changed in the staff room with shaking fingers, her phone still dead, her coat too thin for the night outside. She stepped out the back in trance because it was safer. 'Cause it always felt safer. But the moment she reached the alley, a black car rolled forward without headlights, smooth as a threat. A guard stepped out, expression blank. Miss Alma, he said respectfully. Boss asked us to escort you. Alma's body stiffened. I said no, she whispered. The guard didn't move. Boss doesn't ask twice. Alma backed away, pulse roaring. The car door opened by itself, like the night had decided for her. And then the guard's earpiece crackled. His eyes shifted just once toward the darkness beyond the alley. The guard's face changed. Not fear exactly. Something sharper. Something urgent. He spoke into the earpiece in Korean, then paused as if listening. When he looked back at Alma, his voice was lower. Boss, he said into the device, eyes still on her. She's not safe tonight. Alma didn't scream. She didn't run. Not because she wasn't scared, but because fear had become a routine, like clocking in, like smiling for strangers, like standing upright while something inside her begged to collapse. She stood under the weak alley light with the cold crawling up her legs, staring at the black car like it was a verdict. The guard's eyes never left her. The door was still open, waiting, offering safety the way a cage offers warmth. Alma's throat tightened. I can walk home, she said, even though her voice sounded like it belonged to someone braver than she felt. The guard didn't argue. He just tilted his head slightly, listening to the crackle in his earpiece, then moved aside like he'd been told the next step. Alma didn't get in. Not yet. Her brain raced through the same calculations it always made at night. If she got into that car, she would owe someone powerful. If she refused, she might not make it to the bus stop. And somewhere deep inside her, beneath the bruises, beneath the exhaustion, She knew the truth she didn't want to admit. She didn't have anyone to call. No brother. No sister. No aunt. No friend who could show up at midnight and pretend they weren't afraid. No one in this city who would fight for her just because she existed. She swallowed hard and turned back into the restaurant through the staff entrance, forcing her legs to move like she still had choices. The kitchen was almost empty now. The loudness of dinner service had died into a soft hum. A distant dishwasher, a mop swishing across tile, a tired laugh from someone counting tips. Amma walked past them like a ghost wearing an apron, nodding, smiling, pretending nothing was happening. Her body ached in places she didn't want to name. She could feel her bruise blooming under her sleeve, the tenderness in her ribs when she breathed too deep. She reached the staff bathroom and locked the door behind her with shaking fingers. The mirror over the sink caught her face in that harsh fluorescent light. It was the kind of light that didn't forgive. It showed every sleepless night, every swallowed tear, every time she'd forced herself to be fine. Amma stared at herself for a second, then looked away, like eye contact with her own reflection would make her admit something she wasn't ready to say. She rolled up her sleeve slowly. The bruise on her forearm wasn't small. It wasn't accidental. It was the exact shape of a hand that had gripped too hard. Her skin was darker where it had been squeezed, lighter where it had been struck. Her stomach turned. She ran cold water and pressed a paper towel to it like she could erase the evidence. Like she could scrub violence off her body the way she scrubbed wine stains off tablecloths. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Amma froze. Her phone wasn't dead anymore. She'd plugged it in behind the bar earlier for just a moment, desperate for a little charge, and now it was awake, which meant the world could reach her again. Slowly she pulled it out. One new voice message. No name. Just a number she knew too well, because it had called at the worst times. Always blocked. Always private. Always there. Amma's thumb hovered over it like touching it would burn her. Then she pressed play. First it was just breathing. Heavy. Patient. Like the person on the other end was enjoying the silence. Then a man's voice slid through the speaker. Low. Controlled. Familiar in the most dangerous way. You were smiling tonight, he said. Amma's blood turned to ice. Her knees went weak, and she gripped the sink with both hands. You were laughing like you forgot who you belonged to. Amma's eyes shut tight. She didn't cry. Crying took energy. Crying was something you did when you believed someone might comfort you. She didn't have that luxury. The voice continued, almost gentle. I didn't like it. Pause, then softer. Did you enjoy being watched by another man? Amma's stomach twisted. She could see it in her mind. The way her bruise had been made, the way her wrist had been pulled, the way she'd been told not to make scenes, not to embarrass anyone, not to ruin things. She pressed her forehead against the mirror for 1 second, like she could disappear into the glass. Please, she whispered, but the message couldn't hear her. The voice lowered, crueler now, stripped of pretense. If you tell anyone, if you think a gangster's protection makes you safe, I will remind you what happens to girls who forget. The message ended. The bathroom went silent again, but Amma's ears kept ringing like the threat had branded itself into her skull. She stared at her phone. Her hands were trembling so hard she almost dropped it. She should have run. She knew that. Every logical part of her screamed it. But running meant a life with no money, no papers, no stability. Running meant sleeping under bridges. Running meant being hunted harder. And deep down, Amma understood something that made her feel ashamed. Survival had taught her to accept small cages, because the outside world was colder. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a voice message. It was a text. Unknown number. No greeting. No emojis. No softness. Just a sentence that landed like a gunshot. If you talk, you die. Amma stared at it until the words blurred. Her heart hammered so loud she thought it might be heard through the walls. She didn't have anyone. Not in Korea. Not in this city. Not in this life she'd built out of exhaustion and silence. She slid the phone into her pocket and forced herself to breathe slowly. She washed her face with cold water until her skin stung. She fixed her hair. She practiced her smile again because the world demanded it. Then she unlocked the bathroom door and stepped back into the corridor. That's when she saw the shadow through the frosted glass near the staff exit. Black car. Still there. Waiting like it had been promised to her. Emma's feet stopped moving. Her pulse spiked. Because it wasn't just any car anymore. It wasn't just the boss's security. It was a line between two dangers. And for the first time that night, Emma realized something worse than being hurt. Someone was making choices around her. Someone was moving pieces on a board she didn't even know she was on. She took one step closer to the exit, her breath shallow. The car's engine purred softly, patient. As if it already knew she didn't have anyone else to save her. Emma didn't get in the black car. Not at first. She stood there with her hands clenched inside her sleeves, staring at the tinted window like it could blink first and admit what it wanted. The guard didn't move. Didn't threaten. Didn't rush her. That calm was what scared her most. Because men who were desperate always got loud. Men who were confident didn't need to. "It's okay," the guard said quietly. "Just come with me." 5 minutes. Emma let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. 5 minutes sounded harmless. 5 minutes sounded like the kind of lie she used on herself when she was about to do something she swore she wouldn't. She followed him back through the staff corridor, back past the kitchen that now smelled like wet towels and leftover heat, back into the quiet that came after luxury. The restaurant looked different when the tables were half cleared and the lights were dimmed, like the glamour was only real when people were watching. Emma kept her eyes down, because she could feel the building itself holding its breath. The private dining room door was open. She didn't remember it being open. She didn't like that. The guard gestured for her to go in first. Emma stepped inside and stopped immediately. He was still there. The Korean Mafia boss. Sitting at the table like time didn't apply to him. His jacket was off now, draped neatly over the chair. His sleeves were rolled just enough to show a watch that probably cost more than Emma's entire life in Seoul. His face was calm. Unreadable. Not warm. Not cruel. Worse than both. He looked like a man who had already decided what she was, and was just waiting to see if she would confirm it. Emma swallowed and forced her voice to work. "I'm fine." The lie tasted bitter. She held the words like a shield anyway. "Thank you, sir. But I'm fine." He didn't respond right away. He picked up a napkin slowly, wiped his fingers even though they weren't dirty, and set it down with a kind of precision that made her skin prickle. Silence stretched between them until Emma's nerves started to scream. Then finally he spoke. "You're not fine. No drama. No sympathy. Just a fact." Emma lifted her chin, angry at herself for feeling small. "I said I'm fine." His gaze moved over her like a scan, not like a stare. Like he was reading the bruises she tried to hide under her uniform, the fear she tried to bury under professionalism. His eyes lingered on her sleeve. Emma pulled it down without thinking. Too fast. Too obvious. That small movement exposed her more than any confession could. He didn't smile. He didn't flirt. He didn't soften his voice. "Sit," he said. Emma's body refused. Not because she didn't understand the command, but because she understood exactly what sitting meant. Sitting meant accepting. Sitting meant being owned for a moment. Sitting meant she was no longer a waitress who could pretend she had control. "I can't," she said, and the words came out sharper than she intended. "I have to go home." Something flickered in his expression. It wasn't anger. It was restraint. The kind that looked like it hurt. "Home," he repeated quietly, like the word itself offended him. Emma's throat tightened again. Her phone felt like a weight in her pocket, heavy with that text message. "If you talk, you die." She didn't know who he was to her enemies. She didn't know what opening up in front of him would cost. She only knew one thing. Every time a powerful man offered help, it came with a receipt. "I don't need your protection," she said. I'm not looking for anything." The boss leaned back slightly. His voice lowered just enough to feel like the room tightened around it. Protection is not romance, he said. It's a decision. Alma's stomach knotted. It's control, she shot back before she could stop herself. The guard near the door shifted. Alma felt it instantly. The boss lifted one hand. Not aggressive, just minimal, and the guard went still again. That small action scared her more than shouting ever could. He didn't need to intimidate people. He simply arranged them. You think I want to control you, he said, calm as ice. You're wrong. Alma's laugh came out broken. Then why are you doing this? For the first time, his gaze hardened. Not cruel, not cold, focused. Because someone already is, he said. Alma froze. He wasn't guessing. He was telling her. Like he knew. Like the black car outside wasn't an option. It was a response. I can walk home, Alma whispered again, but this time it sounded like a prayer she didn't believe. The boss looked at her for a long moment, then stood. He moved without hurry, but the air changed the moment he did. The guard opened the door wider. The room seemed smaller now, as if her choices had shrunk. Come, he said. Alma took a step back. No, his eyes didn't flare. His tone didn't rise. That was what made her feel cornered. I'm not asking, he replied softly. Alma's heart slammed against her ribs. Rage sparked in her chest. Rage at the man who hurt her. Rage at the city that didn't care. Rage at herself for being scared of kindness. She forced her feet forward, not because she wanted to obey, but because she was tired of bleeding alone in silence. She walked past him, her shoulders tense, expecting a hand on her arm. But he didn't touch her. Not once. That felt deliberate. Like he was proving something to her. Or to himself. They moved through the restaurant together. Him a step behind her. His presence like a shadow with teeth. Staff watched with wide eyes, pretending not to watch. The guards didn't guide her. They didn't push. They just formed a corridor of obedience. Outside, the night air hit Alma's face like a slap. The street looked normal. Cars passing. Neon signs flickering in the distance. People living life like danger wasn't a private thing hiding behind luxury. The boss stepped beside her at the entrance. His coat draped over his forearm. He didn't offer it. He simply waited, like he was giving her the chance to take it without surrendering pride. Alma didn't. She kept her arms tight around herself, shivering. Then she saw it. Across the street, half hidden near a parked car, a stranger lifted a phone. The screen glowed. The camera pointed directly at them. Her. Him. The click wasn't loud. But Alma heard it anyway. And the boss saw it too. His head turned slowly, eyes locking onto the stranger like a warning made flesh. The stranger didn't run. Not immediately. Like he'd already gotten what he came for. Alma's mouth went dry. Because in that single photo, she wasn't just a waitress with bruises anymore. She was a connection. A weakness. A target with a name someone powerful had finally said out loud. Alma didn't see the message leave the stranger's phone, but she felt the consequence of it the way you feel thunder before the rain hits. The man across the street lowered his device too calmly, like someone who'd just completed a delivery. He walked away without panic, without hesitation, like he wasn't afraid of being noticed, like he knew he wouldn't be caught. And that was the first thing that told Alma she wasn't dealing with a random creep with a camera. She was dealing with someone who had instructions. The boss didn't move fast. He didn't chase. He didn't shout for guards. He just watched the stranger disappear into the night as if memorizing his silhouette. Then he looked down at Alma. Get in, he said. Still calm. Still controlled. But the calm had changed. It wasn't polite anymore. It was protective. Possessive. Dangerous. Alma's stomach tightened as she slid into the back seat of the black car. The leather was too clean. Too expensive. It smelled like money and silence. The door shut with a soft thud that sounded final. She stared at her own trembling hands and hated herself for it. Not because she was weak, because she had been strong for too long, and now her body didn't know how to stop shaking. The boss got in beside her without touching her. His shoulder close enough to feel warm through fabric, but not close enough to feel intimate. That distance wasn't mercy. It was restraint. The car pulled away. Amma tried to breathe normally. Tried to remind herself she'd survived worse than fear. But then she remembered the phone camera. The way it had lifted. The way it had aimed. The way it had captured her standing beside him like she belonged there. Her throat burned. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. The boss didn't respond immediately. He looked forward, eyes reflecting city lights like cold glass. Then finally he spoke. "Neither did I." That made Amma turn. Because it wasn't anger in his voice. It was something else. Something closer to irritation at the universe for forcing his hand. The kind of irritation that comes right before people become ruthless. The car moved through Seoul like it owned the roads. Red lights felt optional. Turns felt pre-approved. It was quiet enough that Amma could hear the soft click in her own head, like her instincts were trying to lock a door she'd already left open. She glanced out the window and saw it. A vehicle behind them, not too close, not too far. Just present, keeping pace, matching every turn. Amma's heart jumped. She leaned forward slightly to look past the headrest, forcing herself to speak even though her voice wanted to hide. "Someone is following us." The driver didn't react. The guard in the front passenger seat didn't react either. Amma's fear rose, sharp and humiliating. "You're not listening," she said louder. The boss's head tilted just a fraction. "I know," he replied. That single word turned her blood cold. Because it meant he'd seen it before she did. It meant he'd been counting seconds since the photo was taken, measuring how long it would take for the response to arrive. Amma's mind raced. Whoever wanted that photo wasn't interested in gossip. They wanted proof. Proof she was near him. Proof she was visible. Proof she was easy to find. The thought made her stomach twist. "This is my fault," Amma said, not because she believed in guilt, but because her brain needed somewhere to put the terror. "If I never..." "Stop," the boss cut in. Not harsh. Not loud. Final. Amma shut her mouth. Her breath shook anyway. He turned to her slowly. His eyes darkening with something that looked almost like regret. "You didn't create danger," he said. "You revealed it." The car took another turn. The tail stayed with them. Then another turn, still there. Amma's skin prickled as the boss lifted his hand slightly, tapping once against the door panel. The driver immediately slowed at the next intersection, blending into traffic like oil sliding over water. The tail tried to adjust. That was the mistake. Amma saw it happen like a scene in slow motion. Another black vehicle appeared from a side street. No flashing lights. No sirens. No drama. It slid in behind the tailing car, boxing it in without anyone on the road realizing what was happening. Amma's breath caught. "What are you doing?" she whispered. The boss didn't answer. His gaze stayed forward. His voice was low, almost bored. "Testing," he said. The tailing car tried to brake out, changed lanes too quickly, clipped the curb slightly. That was all it took. A door opened. A man stepped out like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. The tail's driver was dragged out so fast Amma barely saw the hands that grabbed him. No screaming. No struggle that lasted longer than 3 seconds. It looked like a quiet correction. Like someone wiping a stain off a perfect suit. Amma pressed her palm to the glass, frozen in horror. "Oh my God!" The boss's expression didn't change. But something in his jaw tightened, like he was holding back a storm. His phone buzzed once. He glanced down at it, eyes narrowing briefly, then slipped it away. "He wasn't here for me," he said softly, and the words hit Amma harder than any gunshot. He turned his head toward her, and for the first time, she felt like she was the one being truly seen. Not as a waitress. Not as a stranger. As a problem someone wanted erased. He was here for her. Amma's blood ran cold because she understood the real warning. That photo didn't put her in his world. It exposed her to the kind of world where people didn't warn twice. The safe house didn't feel like safety. It felt like a place the world couldn't reach unless the boss allowed it. The building was quiet in a way that made Amma's ears ring. No television, no music, no staff walking around like normal humans. Only guards positioned like furniture that could kill. She sat on the edge of a leather sofa that cost more than her entire life. Hands folded tightly in her lap, trying to control the shaking that kept coming back like a curse. Across from her, the Korean Mafia boss stood by the window with his back half-turned, watching the city lights without truly seeing them. His suit jacket was still perfect. Not a wrinkle, not a stain. But his presence had changed since the car ride. Back then, he was a storm moving quietly. Now he was something colder. Like the storm had already decided who would drown. Amma swallowed. "I don't need this," she said, forcing the words out before fear could lock them behind her teeth. "I didn't ask you to do all that." He didn't look at her right away. He didn't offer reassurance. He didn't play the savior. When he finally turned his head, the expression on his face wasn't tender. It was measured. Like a judge who already knew the verdict but wanted to hear the confession anyway. "Then why did you hide it?" he asked. His voice was low, calm, almost polite. That politeness scared her more than shouting would have. Amma's fingers curled together so tightly her knuckles went pale. "I didn't hide anything," she lied automatically. The boss walked closer without rushing, each step controlled and quiet, stopping just far enough to keep the air between them sharp. He lowered his gaze to her arm. "Your sleeve," he said. "Your posture. The way you flinch when someone stands behind you." His eyes lifted to hers. "You didn't hide nothing. You hid everything." Amma's throat burned. She could feel the weight of his attention pressing into her ribs. The silence stretched. And in that silence, she realized he wasn't asking because he cared. He was asking because someone had already dared to touch what he had seen, what he had noticed, what he had decided belonged under his watch now. Amma laughed once, short and bitter, like her body trying to protect her from crying. "You think you know what happened," she whispered. "You don't." The boss's mouth twitched slightly, but not into a smile. More like the faintest sign of recognition. "I know you're afraid of talking," he said. "More than you're afraid of pain." The words hit too close and Amma's eyes stung. She looked away fast, blinking hard. Her pride was the only thing still keeping her upright. "It was an accident," she said, voice thin. "I fell." The boss didn't move. He didn't argue. He didn't tell her to stop lying. He just waited, and the waiting felt like punishment. Like he had all night to watch her break. Amma's voice cracked. "Why do you care?" she asked finally. "You don't even know me." The boss's gaze sharpened on her face. "I know Bruises," he answered. That was all. 2 words. But something in his tone made Amma's stomach twist, because it didn't sound like a man speaking from imagination. Sounded like a man remembering. She swallowed again and forced herself to lift her chin. "It wasn't an accident," she admitted quietly. The words landed like glass on the floor. She expected him to soften, to step closer, to say something comforting. But he didn't. He only listened, still, silent, eyes steady, like he was deciding how much of the city deserved to burn. Amma looked down at her hands. "It was someone from the Untouchables," she said. Her voice got smaller on that word. Untouchables. The kind of people you don't report. The kind of people who buy laws and bury witnesses. The kind of people who could ruin your life with one phone call and sleep peacefully afterward. The boss's eyes narrowed slightly. "Name," he said. Amma flinched. "I can't." He took one step closer, and suddenly the air felt too thin to breathe. "You can," he corrected, voice colder now. "You won't." Amma's lips trembled, anger rising in her chest because fear was humiliating. "You don't understand," she snapped. "If I say it out loud, it becomes real. It becomes mine," he interrupted softly. Amma froze. The boss stared at her like he was looking through her skin, through her secrets, through everything she tried to survive. Then his gaze dropped to the side of her neck where her name tag used to sit at work. "You recognized my surname," he said, and it wasn't a question. Amma's heart stopped. She hadn't meant to react earlier, but she had. She remembered the way his name had been whispered in the staff room like a prayer and a warning. She remembered the way managers went silent when his reservation came in. "Everyone knows your name," she whispered. "That's why I didn't want you to notice me." The boss's eyes darkened further. "Wrong," he said. "You didn't want me to connect you." Amma's breath hitched. "Connect me to what?" she asked, but she already felt the answer crawling up her spine. The boss's phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen once, and the room temperature seemed to drop. He put it away slowly, then looked at her like the last piece had clicked into place. "The man who touched you," he said, voice low and deadly calm, "works for someone I buried years ago." Amma's stomach turned to ice, 'cause she understood what that meant. The bruises weren't the end of her problem. They were the beginning. Morning didn't feel like morning. It felt like the city waking up with a bruise of its own, quiet at first, then spreading. Amma stood by the window of the safe house with a mug of untouched tea warming her hands, staring down at streets that looked normal if you didn't know what to look for. Cars moved. People walked. A delivery scooter passed like nothing had changed. But something had changed. She could feel it the way she felt eyes on her even when she couldn't see them. Behind her, the guards didn't speak. They didn't shift. They didn't breathe like ordinary men. They were there the same way locks were there. To keep something in. Or keep something out. Her phone buzzed for the first time since last night, not with comfort but with noise. Messages she didn't open. Missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. A notification from the restaurant group chat. 20 new messages in under a minute. She stared at the screen like it might bite her. Then she opened it. "Did you hear? He's gone. They're saying he never made it home. Delete this chat. Delete this chat." Amma's thumb hovered over the messages. Her heartbeat started to thud so loud she wondered if the guards could hear it. Someone attached a blurry photo. A man being pushed into a car in the dark. Just shoulders and panic and a flash of a hand covering his mouth. No faces. No proof. But the fear in the chat was enough to tell the story. The restaurant wasn't just whispering. The city was whispering. She'd thought bruises were private things. Marks you could hide under sleeves and makeup and lies. She'd been wrong. Bruises were loud in a city like this. Especially when they belonged to someone the boss had seen. Amma turned slowly toward the living room. The Mafia boss sat at a table, calm as stone, reading something on a tablet like he was reviewing stock reports, not deciding who deserved to keep breathing. His neck tattoo peeked above his collar when he shifted, a dark mark that made him look like he belonged to danger, not wealth. He didn't look tired. He didn't look haunted. He looked like morning was just another weapon he could use. Amma's lips parted. "What did you do last night?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately. He set the tablet down with a quietness that felt deliberate. Like even his silence had manners. "I corrected a misunderstanding," he said. Amma's stomach twisted. "A misunderstanding. Someone thought they could touch you," he replied. "They were wrong." His voice stayed low, controlled. The words should have felt like protection. Instead they felt like a wall closing in. Amma's fingers tightened around the mug until heat burned her skin. "You didn't even know me," she whispered. Now people are disappearing." The boss finally lifted his gaze to hers. There was no romance in it. No softness. Only a cold, precise attention that made her feel both seen and trapped. "That's the problem," he said. "I do know what you are now." Amma swallowed. "What am I?" His eyes didn't move. "A witness," he said. "A weakness," he added after a beat. "And bait if you walk outside like nothing happened." Her throat went dry. The safe house suddenly felt smaller. The air felt thicker. She stepped back from the window like the glass itself was unsafe. Another vibration hit her phone. This time a news alert from a local outlet. Not a major network. Not bold headlines. Just a cautious sentence wrapped in careful language. Sources claim an influential figure connected to nightlife and private security is missing. Police have declined to comment. Amma's eyes flicked down the rest of the article. Words like alleged, unconfirmed, rumored. But the comments were a flood of one name repeated in different disguises. They didn't say it fully. They hinted. Initials, emojis, crown, a knife, black circle. People spoke the boss's name the way you spoke a curse you didn't want to attract. Amma looked up again and found one of the guards watching her. Not with curiosity, but with assessment. Like she was important now. Like she was dangerous now. That was the part that made her blood run cold. She wasn't famous. She wasn't powerful. She was a waitress who had learned how to smile through pain. Yet overnight, the city had shifted around her like she was the center of something violent. Later that afternoon, the boss didn't let her leave, but he didn't lock her in a room either. He allowed her to sit in the car when they moved. Tinted windows, silent engine, men in black following like shadows attached to his existence. Amma watched Seoul pass by in fragments. Billboards, pedestrians, normal life pretending it wasn't afraid. Then she saw it. On a wide street near an intersection, a car sat burned out in the daylight like someone had left a message where the whole city could read it. Charred metal, smashed windows, smoke stains up the side like fingerprints. People stood at a distance, filming with shaking hands, not getting too close. Amma's breath caught. Her stomach lurched. She recognized the car immediately. The same dented bumper. The same sticker on the rear window. Her attacker's car. Burned. In public. In daylight. Amma's hand flew to the window, palm flat against the glass as if she could push the scene away. "No," she whispered. The boss didn't look surprised. He didn't even turn his head much. But his voice drifted across the seat like a warning wrapped in calm. "That," he said quietly, "is what the city looks like when it understands I'm awake." Amma's eyes filled, not with relief, but with dread. Because she finally understood the price of being noticed by a man like him. She wasn't invisible anymore. And in his world, being seen was the first step to becoming a target. Amma didn't sleep. Not because the safe house was loud, it was too quiet. The kind of quiet that made every breath feel suspicious. Every blink felt like wasted time. By the time the sun rose fully, the city outside had already chosen its story. And it wasn't her story. It was his. It always became his. She stood in the bathroom mirror and stared at herself like she was a stranger she couldn't trust. The bruises on her arm were darker today, blooming with color like proof her body had been telling the truth even when her mouth refused. She pulled her sleeve down, then pulled it back up again, her fingers trembling with rage that had nowhere to go. A few hours ago she had been a woman who existed between tables and tips and forced smiles. Now she was the reason a car burned in daylight. She walked out of the bathroom and found him exactly where he always was. Calm, seated, clean, untouched by the chaos he had created. He looked like a man who could order a storm and still have the patience to sip tea while it destroyed someone else's house. Amma's voice didn't shake when she spoke. That was what shocked her most. "I didn't ask you to ruin everything." His eyes lifted slowly, like her anger was expected, like it was a phase he had already calculated. "Everything was already ruined," he said. "You just didn't know it yet." Amma stepped closer. She didn't stop at the edge of the room the way she used to stop at the edge of men's power. She walked into it. She placed her phone on the table hard enough that it tapped like a warning. "You made me a headline without my name," she said, the words clipped, controlled. "You made people disappear. You burned a car like it was nothing. Do you understand what you did to me?" His expression didn't change, but something in his jaw tightened like a silent admission. "I kept you alive," he replied. Amma laughed once, dry and sharp. "You kept me alive by turning me into a problem. You were already a problem," he said, voice soft. "To someone else." She leaned forward, palms on the table, close enough to smell the clean scent of expensive cologne mixed with something colder underneath it. Metal. Mope. The kind of scent that lingered on men who didn't do their own violence but still owned it. "Is this what you do?" she asked. "You see pain and you buy it. You protect it so you can own it." The room held its breath. Even the guards by the door looked like they were listening without permission. The boss's gaze didn't drop to her hands. It stayed on her face. "Nobody touches what's under my protection," he said. His tone wasn't romantic. It was law. "Then don't protect me," Alma snapped. "Because your protection feels like a cage that smiles." For a moment, just a moment, his calm cracked enough to show something human behind it. Not pity. Not softness. Something worse. Possession laced with guilt. "Protection has consequences," he said, quiet as a blade sliding from a sheath. "If I step in, I don't do it halfway." Alma swallowed. Her heart pounded, but her eyes didn't drop. "And if I don't want consequences?" she demanded. "If I just want my life back?" He stared at her like she'd asked for something impossible. "Then you should have never bled where I could see it," he replied. The words hit her like a slap, not because they were cruel, but because they were honest. Alma's throat tightened. She hated him for making sense. She hated herself for feeling safer in this room with a dangerous man than she ever felt alone in peace. That was the part that made her furious. Phone buzzed. Not hers. One of the guard's devices. The guard checked it, then froze, his posture sharpening like a warning siren with no sound. He walked forward and handed the phone to the boss with both hands. Alma watched the boss's eyes scan the screen. Something in the air shifted. Temperature dropped. He didn't blink. Alma knew before he spoke that whatever it said had teeth. He turned the screen toward her. "Photo. Leaving the restaurant last night." Her face half-turned, sleeve covering bruises. His shadow beside her like a rumor walking. Under it, a message posted on a private board, spread into public spaces by morning. So this is his weakness. Alma's stomach sank. "No," she whispered. "They did this on purpose," the boss said. "They want the city to see what I care about." Alma backed away a step like the words could hit her. "But you don't care about me," she said quickly, like denial could save her. His eyes pinned her. "I care enough to start a war," he answered. Silence swallowed the room. Alma felt her breath shaking now, not with fear, but with the weight of what she had become. Weakness. A weapon. Reason. The boss stood, slow and controlled, and walked toward her. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. His presence was already contact. "Listen to me," he said, voice low. "You wanted truth. Here it is. You can't go back to being nobody." Alma's eyes burned. "Then what am I supposed to do?" He didn't soften. He didn't lie. He gave her the only two options his world allowed. "You disappear forever," he said. "New name. New country. No past. No trace." Alma's pulse jumped. Or. He held her gaze like he was daring her to survive. "Or you stand beside me," he finished. "And you learn what it costs to be protected by the kind of man people pray never notices them." Alma stared at him, chest rising and falling fast, realizing the choice wasn't really a choice. It was two different kinds of death. And she had to decide which one she could live with. Alma stood in front of him like she was trying to remember what her spine was made of. Not fear. Not gratitude. Not desperation. She was tired of men deciding what happened to her body, her name, her future. Tired of being handled like a fragile thing that could be moved, hidden, traded. The safe house felt too expensive to be real. The warm lights, the polished floor, the silence that didn't belong to any poor girl who survived on tips and painkillers. It felt like a room built for decisions that ruined lives quietly. His eyes were on her like he was waiting for her to break. He didn't. "I'm not disappearing," she said. The words came out clean. Simple. Final. The boss didn't react the way most men did when a woman refused him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't smile. He didn't threaten. His calm just became colder, like a door locking without noise. "Then you'll die," he replied. Amma's jaw clenched. "Maybe," she said. "But I'll die as myself." Something flickered in his gaze then. Interest, almost respect, like he was watching a knife decide not to fold. Amma stepped forward and placed her palm flat on the table between them. Not to beg. To anchor herself. "You keep saying you're protecting me," she said. "But you never asked what I want." His voice stayed low. "Tell me." Amma's throat tightened, but she forced the words through. "I want the truth." She didn't blink. "I want the name of the man who did this. I want the name of the man who paid him. And I want the name of the man who thinks I'm disposable." His expression didn't shift, but the air around him sharpened. "That's not how my world works," he said. Amma's laugh held no humor. "Then your world is the problem," she answered. "And I'm done living under it." The boss watched her for a long moment, as if he was measuring whether her anger was brave or foolish. Then he turned his head slightly, murmured something in Korean, and within seconds a guard entered with a slim black tablet. The boss didn't push it to her like a gift. He placed it down like a weapon. "This is everything we have," he said. "Calls. Transfers. Photos." Amma stared at the screen and felt her stomach twist. It wasn't just proof of one man hurting her. It was proof of a whole city letting it happen. Rich men in clean suits, women with diamonds and perfect smiles, officials who smiled for cameras while signing paperwork that turned people into prey. "Why are you showing me this?" she whispered. "Because you said you don't want comfort," the boss replied. "You want power." Amma's hands hovered over the tablet like she was afraid it would burn her. "Power comes with a cost," he added quietly. "I know," she said, voice tight. "I've been paying it all my life. I just didn't realize I was paying for other people to stay clean." She scrolled, her eyes catching on a name that made her lungs freeze. A name she recognized from television. Philanthropist. A family man. The kind of person who shook hands with bishops and smiled beside charity banners. Amma swallowed hard. This can't be real." "It is," the boss said. "He owns half the men who walk around untouchable." Amma looked up. "And the other half." The boss's mouth curved faintly, but there was nothing warm about it. "They owe me." Silence fell again. Amma's mind raced. Not in panic, but in clarity. Disappearing meant living like a ghost forever. Standing beside him meant becoming part of the storm that ruined people. But there was a third option nobody expected a woman like her to choose. "I'm not going to be your weakness," Amma said. His gaze narrowed. "Then what will you be?" Amma's voice lowered. "Their problem." The boss didn't interrupt. He didn't stop her. He let her speak like she mattered. Amma straightened, shoulders squared, and said the words that changed the air permanently. "I want to testify." One of the guards shifted, startled. Even the boss paused, the tiniest hesitation, like he hadn't expected her to choose a battlefield with cameras instead of guns. "Testify where?" he asked. "In front of them," Amma replied, eyes burning. "In the places they feel safe. In the rooms where they laugh about women like me and call it business." The boss stared at her with something that almost looked like warning. "If you do that," he said slowly, "they will come for you in ways you can't imagine." Amma's lips trembled, but she didn't back down. "Let them," she whispered. "I'm tired of living like I'm already dead." Hours later, she stood in a marble hallway that smelled like expensive perfume and false morality. Press conference. Hearing. A room full of people who looked at her like she was a stain that learned to speak. Amma held the file in her hands like it weighed more than paper. Cameras flashed. Whispers chased her name. And when she spoke, her voice cut straight through the polished lies. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She exposed them. Photos. Money trails. The room changed color. Faces paled. A woman in pearls covered her mouth. A man who'd smiled on billboards stared like she'd pulled off his skin. Amma felt fear crawling up her spine, But she kept going until silence hit like impact. When it was over, she walked out into the night air and realized she could never go back. Her old life was gone. Her safety was gone. Even her anonymity was gone. Behind her, the boss stepped close enough for his voice to reach only her. "Now," he murmured, "they won't stop until you're dead." Alma inhaled, tasted cold air, and replied without looking at him, "Then don't stop until they're finished." By morning, Seoul didn't feel like the same city. The lights were still there. The traffic still moved. People still ordered coffee and scrolled their phones with bored thumbs. But something had shifted underneath the pavement, something people couldn't name, only feel. Like the air had learned a new rule overnight. Alma watched it from behind tinted glass in the backseat of a silent car that smelled like leather and cold decisions. Her hands were wrapped around a paper cup of tea she hadn't asked for. The warmth didn't reach her chest. Nothing did. The Mafia boss sat across from her, shoulders still, eyes forward, as if sleep was a concept he'd never trusted. There was dried blood on his knuckles that didn't belong to her this time. It belonged to the city. It belonged to the cost. Alma didn't ask where he'd gone after she spoke. She didn't ask who he'd called. She didn't ask what strings he'd pulled so fast that even the powerful began to shake. 'Cause she already knew. Men like him didn't fight with fists first. They fought with silence. They fought with the ability to make a person exist one day and vanish the next. She had exposed monsters in expensive suits. But he had been built to punish them. The first sign came as a notification pinging across every screen. A breaking news headline. A philanthropist arrested. Another official resigned in the middle of the night. A charity foundation raided for fraud. Names that had always been untouchable suddenly looked small under harsh white police lights. Someone had leaked files. Hard evidence, too clean to be accidental, too detailed to be chance. The city watched, stunned, as the same men who had smiled beside microphones were now hiding their faces behind jackets. Alma felt her stomach turn. She should have felt satisfaction, justice, relief. Instead, she felt something sharper. She felt grief for the version of herself who thought truth alone was enough. The boss's phone buzzed once. He didn't look at it. Second buzz. He still didn't look. Third. He finally lifted it, read one message, and slid the phone back into his coat pocket as if nothing mattered. But his jaw tightened. His gaze darkened. "It's done," he said. The words were calm. "Come." Alma's voice came out dry. "Done how?" He didn't answer right away. The car moved through the city like it owned the streets. Guards on motorcycles glided beside them. Traffic lights changed before they arrived. Drivers moved without honking. The city obeyed the shadow of his name even when he wasn't visible. Alma stared out the window and saw it. She saw the fear in places fear wasn't supposed to live. Inside luxury lobbies, behind hotel reception desks, in the way men glanced over their shoulders while pretending they weren't. She saw a black SUV parked outside the restaurant where she used to smile through pain. The restaurant was closed. Not for renovations. Not for holiday. Closed like someone had decided it didn't deserve to exist anymore. A worker stood outside holding a clipboard, shaking. Alma recognized him. He'd once told her to fix her face when customers complained her smile wasn't bright enough. Now he couldn't even look up. She turned back to the boss. "You didn't just protect me," she whispered. "You erased things." The boss's eyes stayed on the road ahead, but his voice lowered. "I erased the parts of this city that thought you were disposable." Alma swallowed hard. "And what about me?" His silence answered first. Then he spoke, not like a king, not like a savior, like a man who had finally run out of excuses. "You can't go back," he said. Alma's fingers tightened around the cup until the lid creaked. "I know." She looked down at her hands and realized her bruises were fading. The purple had turned to yellow, the swelling down. But the feeling wasn't leaving. Not the fear. Not the rage. Not the quiet shame of remembering how many nights she'd swallowed pain just to survive one more shift. "What happens now?" she asked. The boss turned his head slightly, eyes settling on her like a weight. "Now the city knows you," he said. "And my enemies know you." Amma's throat tightened. "So I'm a target forever." "You're alive forever," he corrected. Then softer. "That's the difference." Amma stared at him, and for the first time she saw it clearly. Protecting her didn't soften him. It didn't heal him. It didn't turn him into a better man. It cracked him open in the one place he'd kept sealed. Because to protect her, he hadn't just used power. He had felt something. And men like him didn't survive feelings. They survived control. The car stopped. A building rose in front of them. Safe, quiet, guarded. A new life waiting behind locked doors. Amma didn't move right away. She didn't thank him. She didn't promise anything. She just said, barely audible, "Freedom costs too much." The boss leaned back, eyes dark, voice like steel wrapped in fatigue. "So does love." Amma opened the door and stepped out into the cold morning, feeling the city watching her without knowing it. Behind her, he remained in the shadows, still powerful, still feared, still undefeated. But something inside him had shifted permanently. He had seen her bruises and made the city pay. But the real shock wasn't what he did to them. It was what protecting her did to him.